Oh. Hi. Can I help you, or? Yeah, see, they don't normally let people who aren't in costume back here. Oh, you're new. All right, look. If anybody comes by, just tell them you're with me. It'll be okay. Oh, there you are. Yeah, sure. Ask me anything you want. Well, the usual first question is, how does someone become a furry? There's no one answer. I'll tell you how it happened to me. I didn't used to be like this. I didn't used to be a part of the furry community. I, once upon a time, was a sad and lonely little man. I had a couple of friends, but they were online, not really local. And I wasn't really happy with my life or where it was going. And I was on the verge of becoming a statistic, a suicide. So one day, I sat down at my computer to prepare myself. Hey guys, I know that you don't really know me a lot beyond the icon and the screen name, but I want you to know that you've been really important to me, and I really appreciate that. I'm not going to be around online anymore, so think of me from time to time. I'd really appreciate it. Oh, fuck! Rekha, not a good time, okay? You would have to ask me this now, wouldn't you? I guess I don't have anything better to do. World's largest convention of anthropomorphics. Dude, are you a furry? Wow, okay, all right. Well, okay, no, it's fine. I just didn't know. I'm not into that whole scene, so maybe you should find somebody else to go with you? Anthrocon. Okay. All right, that's kind of cute. That's actually adorable. Okay, no, that's horrifying, no. I'll do it, but I reserve the right to bail if I get too creeped out. Now, I've been to conventions before. They're all pretty much the same, and whether you're a chemist or you write Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock erotic fiction. I don't know what I was expecting to be different this time than any of the other nerd conventions I've been to, but in that regard, I guess I was a little disappointed. Rekha picked me up from the airport wearing a pair of pink cat ears. When we got to the hotel for check-in, I had to squeeze my way through a very crowded, very fancy Westin Convention Center hotel lobby. And there were a lot of fairly normal-looking people around, minus the ones with ears and tails. And then over here, there were a few that were more of a punk rock aesthetic. And then there were the neck-bearded mouth breather types. You know, the kind of guys you expect to see at a Pride Fest on meth. Rekha, this is a little overwhelming. No, dude, look, it'll be fine. We just gotta get through check-in and get your badges from registration, and everything will calm down. Hey, Toby! Rekha! You made it! Ha! Toby was a 6.5-foot tall, very athletically built individual wearing blue rabbit ears. When he picked up Rekha and squeezed him, I thought he was going to pop him. So I looked around a little uncomfortably and started to notice that around the room there were couples here and there, nuzzling and cuddling each other, and the worst possible scenario started to make its way through my mind. And I envisioned immediately when the elevator doors closed on the way up to the rooms, the furries would start in with their sexual depravity, and I decided right then that I was going to walk the stairs up to my room. Who's your friend? Toby, this is Singe. Good to meet you. Singe, huh? What species? I beg your pardon? What species are you? I didn't know how to answer that. It's like somebody going down the street and asking what race you are. Toby, Singe isn't really... Wolf was the first thing that came to my mind. Wolf? Oh man, I was hoping for something interesting like a gazelle. Us prey animals gotta stick together, you know? Look, I gotta get up to my room. I got a lot of booze to carry up. It was good to meet you. After we got through with hotel registration, I found out that our rooms were on the 23rd floor, which for someone in my physical shape completely precludes the idea of me walking the stairs up. So I was forced to take the elevator, and admittedly the elevator ride was pretty tame. The con security was cutting 2 or 3 people in costume to the front of the line for every car. So I was in the elevator with some kind of pink canine with white hearts embroidered all over his body, and a gray wolf with a snarky expression and 3 colors worth of mohawk. So, did you think about anything you wanted to try? Anything on the con schedule that looked interesting? I don't know, man. I have no frame of reference for this. I'll tell you what. You pick something, point me at it, and I'll go do that. Well, I think the best thing for somebody who's new to all this is probably to go see Uncle Kage. This horrified me simply from the sound of it, because I envisioned this creepy old man, like with missing teeth, sitting on the front porch playing the banjo. It was like I don't know, Deliverance or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was happening to me, only instead of like the guy wearing the mask made of human skin and chasing me with a chainsaw, I was going to get chased down by some kind of giant fluffy purple skunk and cuddled to death. So we ran down the hall to get to Kage's talk or whatever was going on, and we got there very late. He was wrapping things up. Kage was not as horrifying as I expected him to be. He was a skinny, funny little man in a lab coat talking about acceptable standards of behavior. Now, this is going to seem elementary, but it bears repeating. We have a lot of new folks who come to Anthrocon every year, and it really is for the comfort and safety of everyone around you. Please obey what we have affectionately termed the 6-2-1 rule. I would like a volunteer, someone who's new. You in the back, you there with the glasses. Yes, you, young man, come up here. I want to use you for a demonstration. Yes, now, let me see. You seem to be very well rested, my friend. How much sleep would you say you got in the last day? 7, 8 hours? Ah, I see. And you seem quite well nourished. You don't appear to be hungry. How many times have you eaten today? Breakfast and lunch? Yeah, both. Ah, and pardon me, but you do not stink. Therefore, I can assume you have had a shower. Yes. And there we have it, folks, the 6-2-1 rule in action. You may sit down if you like, sir. Thank you very much. That is 6 hours of sleep, 2 good meals. Beer and ramen do not count, nor does hard liquor. And 1 shower per 24-hour period. We have all been, those of us who have been going to conventions for a while, we've all seen the individual who has a very pungent scent. But it's radiating off of him like odor lines coming from a comic strip. And we've all been to the convention where the young fellow has arrived at his first Furry Con. He spent all his money getting here, and the last bit of money he had, he went straight to the dealer's room and bought art, or art prints, or custom sketches, or soap, or whatever you kids spend your money on these days. And so he's living on what he can beg, borrow, or steal from his roommates. And we've all seen the convention zombies. They start showing up around Saturday morning. These are the ones who arrived at the convention on Wednesday, immediately began to party. Sometime around Friday at about 5 in the morning, they decided to go to bed. And at 5:10, they got up and proceeded to go back and party some more. And so now they are having the most miserable time of their lives, and so they're making everyone else around them miserable. We encourage you to have a wonderful time at Anthrocon, and that means exercising good judgment, which leads me to our last point. Public displays of affection. Now, I am not foolish, nor am I that old. I know that some of you folks are young and impetuous. This is your first Furry Con, and you've met your special someone, and you might want to go and have a good time. We encourage you to have a good time in accordance with our acceptable behavior policies. That means that there should be nothing happening in the public spaces that could not appear on broadcast television. That is broadcast, not cable. I'm sure we all remember a few years ago during the Super Bowl when Janet Jackson's wardrobe mysteriously malfunctioned. That wasn't very much, and that was enough to get them into trouble. The same rules apply here with Anthrocon. We don't care what you do in the privacy of your own home, or your own room, rather. This isn't your home, I hope. And as long as it does not involve hotel staff, comm security, or the police. Now, I'm sure you're all tired of hearing me ramble on, this old gray muzzle that I am, so go on, go forth, my lovelies, have a fantastic Anthrocon. Now, standing up on that platform, looking out at the crowd, I saw this disparate group of people, and they were all drawn here for this love of what exactly? I didn't know what these people were drawn together by. I had thought it was sex. I watched CSI. There was an episode of CSI Las Vegas, this is important, called Fur and Loathing. But the furries in that show weren't acting like the furries I was seeing around me, and the costumes sure as hell didn't look as cute. I figured the best person to give me an answer was Kage, so I made my way through his vast entourage of people that were following him and asked him my questions like, what are you fans of exactly, and how do you come up with these characters? And he told me, well, come to my Q&A panel and I will explain everything. So I had nothing else to do, so I followed him to the next panel room. Now, I have had some questions already from new furries. I took exception to this. I wasn't a furry. I just was curious. About how you create a persona, your furry character. Well, I'll tell you, there are as many ways of doing that as there are people in this room or people on this earth. There's no one way. Here is how it happened to me. I had this old dumb terminal, which I used to use to log on to BBSs or mucks or other terms that you've probably never heard of, being so much younger than me. And one day I'm sitting at the terminal, and up the side and across the top crawled the greasiest, biggest black Asian cockroach you have ever seen in all your days. And I knew enough, I had never seen one, but I knew enough about them to know exactly what this was that I was seeing. And I was disgusted. I tried to shoo it away. Go, shoot, shoot! Any normal cockroach, you turn the lights on, they will scatter, they will run away. They are timid creatures. This one, not so much. It looked right back into my eyes, reared itself up onto its hind legs. I said, you're a ballsy little roach, aren't you? And my disgust was sort of replaced with this grudging admiration. And a light bulb went on in my head. I said, that's it. And I envisioned a little cockroach in black samurai armor with like 4 swords. And I introduced this character on Furry Muck, and it was a big hit. He was riding around on the shoulders of all the wolves and foxes and looking like a little Toshiro Mifune or something like that. Pretty stern. And I named him Kagamushi, which is, of course, a play on the Akira Kurosawa film title Kagamusha, which is the Shadow Warrior. Now, mushi in Japanese is insect. So what he became was Kagamushi, was the shadow bug. For reasons of shorthanding and being quick for communication, it eventually was just shortened to Kage, which that was about 1991, and that has been me, more or less, after a fashion ever since. I still didn't understand what he hadn't answered my question. What are you fans of? I've seen My Little Pony and Disney's Robin Hood wandering around the same convention, but I don't understand. Well, young man, the short answer, and thank you again for volunteering, is that we are fans of the anthropomorphic aesthetic. We like to imagine how cool the world would be if it had these walking, talking animals in it. Some of us, we are all creators in this fandom. Some of us do it by art. That's a big thing. Some of us do it by writing, some by costumes, just really any sort of thing you can think of to apply it to. You can really see an example of the best our fandom has to offer over in our dealer's den. So, my quest for understanding continued. I made my way to the dealer's den, which was in one of these giant convention hall spaces with the concrete floors, the big giant vaulted ceilings, and the big skylights. And row after row of merchants selling furry-themed merchandise, t-shirts like this, or like with a big paw print on them, a rainbow paw print that says Furry Pride, or human-sized dog collars, and, God help me, caffeinated soap. But there was one booth that caught my eye, and it caught my eye because it was different. Most of the booths I was seeing were visually oriented. This one was a bookseller, Sofa Wolf Press. Fortunately, there wasn't a line or a big crowd. Hi. I'm kind of new to all this, can I ask you a couple of questions? Why animal people? Well, if you think back to the stories that we all grew up with, you think back to Aesop's fables, you'll always hear the story of the sneaky, crafty fox or the wolf that's the big bad wolf. Those are archetypes. Those are stories. So we just continue on in that sort of tradition. Fine, but it seems to me like there's all those old stories, but there's really not anything new unless you create it. So I mean, are you fans of your own stuff? Or, well, you're right that we do make a lot of our own stuff here in the fandom, and we're a very creative group, but you're wrong that stuff isn't out there. Think back to what you grew up watching cartoon-wise as a kid. You watched Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, or Mickey Mouse, maybe. You watched, I don't know, Rescue Rangers. You watched Darkwing Duck, anything that Disney put out for a long period of time. All of that is anthropomorphic. It's all essentially what we would term furry in some way. I hadn't thought about that. The more I started to think about it, the more I started thinking about the cartoons and things that I had watched. I was a huge fan of Darkwing Duck. Hell, on Rescue Rangers, I think when I was 8 years old, I had a crush on Gadget. Does that make me a furry? Have I always been a furry? Am I a furry now, or will I be a furry? What does that mean? Do I have to buy this? Do I need to have a costume? What is it? I force myself to just calm down and breathe and talk to this gentleman a little more. Fortunately, he was very accommodating. Turned out he was the author of several of the books on the table. And so I picked his brain a little more, and I figured it would be polite to ask him what his books were about. So we talked about each of them, and I decided I should probably buy something. So I ended up picking up one about a gay tiger who plays professional football and his fox boyfriend. I figured, why not read the craziest thing I could find, right? All around the dealer's room, I kept seeing these people in costumes, fursuiters, they are called in the fandom. And some of them were so animated, and they were really into it. They were really engaged, and it was so much fun to watch. And there were others that didn't really hold my attention, even though the costumes were gorgeous, because they weren't really in it so much as they looked like people in very uncomfortable outfits, just walking around looking rather bored, even though the expression on the faces was almost universally bright and smiling. And then there were the ones I really didn't understand. They weren't really fursuiting at all. They had their hand paws off, and they were carrying their head under their arm. Now, in the convention literature, I had read something about something called a headless lounge, where the fursuiters can go and cool off and take their heads off, and I didn't really understand why they were walking around out here like that when it was apparently like across the hall. So I caught up with Rekha coming back out of a Dance Dance Revolution tournament and asked him, well, man, I'm not really a fursuiter. I don't know that much about it other than, just seeing them. If you want to know about that, your best bet is to go down to the Headless Lounge and, I don't know, find Twitch or JD Puppy. They're probably the best fursuiters I know. So, I'm not ashamed to admit that the fursuiters were kind of intriguing. I can honestly see myself doing that. But I needed to understand the differences between those groups of people. So I made my way down to the Headless Lounge to seek the Sage of Fursuiting or whatever. And I had to wait outside the door until the Cerberus that guarded the door to make sure that only the fursuiters got in was distracted by something. And then I had to sneak in behind the suitor. The place was big and cold. The temperature dropped by 10 or 15 degrees when I hit the door. Fortunately, there weren't that many people around. I was able to see the person I was looking for. Not because of his fursuit head, which was mounted on a drying rack sitting behind at the back wall, but because of his convention badge that said Twitch. So I made my introductions and I asked my question. Rules? I mean, yeah, there are rules. I mean, they're not like rules, okay? Like, you know, nobody's going to come and break your knees with a baseball bat if you don't follow them. I guess some of us think they're kind of important. Like, I mean, there's a big one, like, you don't talk unless the mouth of your head moves or you can see your mouth. That's a big one. The other one's what everybody kind of makes fun of and calls don't break the magic, which, okay, look, if I'm in this costume, right, I'm in this big wolf head thing, and I'm playing with you, and you're out there and you're playing back. Now, you and I both know, as rational human beings, that there's no such thing as a giant wolf on two legs standing there playing with you, but we agree to act like there is one. So if you walk up, you're standing there and you take your head off in front of that same person, it's like, to me, you walked up behind that character, put a gun to its head and pulled the trigger, bang! Kills it, absolutely dead. Now, okay, the thing about these is, yeah, they're fun. They're big cuddle balls of fluff. We go around, we hug people, whatever, and we make people laugh. But it's not always frivolous. There are some people who get a real, it's the only positive thing that's going to happen in their day, that they get to interact with a giant stuffed animal. And imagine it's even worse if it's a kid. You know, this one ray of sunshine in this kid who's got a bad home life. Which is why I get really upset when I see a fursuiter who won't interact with a kid or they put on a half-assed performance. It makes me really mad. You know, let me tell you a little story. You know, before I got my suit, I took a job as the Easter Bunny. First job I got sent out on was to this children's home. And I thought, okay, you know, I'll go do the orphanage of little kids. When I got there, I found out that it wasn't so much an orphanage as it was a home for abused kids. So there were a lot of kids there that were, you know, 15, 16, 17. They didn't give a crap about the Easter Bunny, so fine. But there were a few little kids running around. I focused my attention on them. And this one little girl ran up to me with eyes big as saucers. She said to me, "Are you a real wabbit? I've never seen a wabbit that looked as real as you before." Yes, I certainly am. She took me by the paw and pulled me over to a picnic table and sat down on my lap and kept asking me questions. You know, first off, she was trying to get me to admit that I wasn't real. She was trying to trip me up. But the more I answered her questions, the more and more convinced she was that I was really the real thing. She finally left when it was time for the big Easter egg hunt, and the first thing that happened, I get surrounded by a wall of staff staring at me. What did you say to her? What did she say to you? What did you do? Look, I'm out here in front of God and everybody with your permission. You trying to accuse me of something? And the little old lady that was the head in charge of the staff said, "Oh, no, we're not trying to accuse you of anything. We're sorry, we didn't mean to make you think that. It's just that Linda was very seriously abused not very long ago, and she's been here 6 months. She hasn't said a word to anybody, except for you." So I did my best to tell them what we've been talking about, which wasn't easy. And when Linda came running back up with the big stuffed rabbit that she won for winning the Easter egg hunt, she gave me a big hug, jumped back up on my lap, got a picture made, and she was talking the whole time. The staff was standing about 10 feet away, smiling and giving me the thumbs up. When I left, she was still talking, only she was talking to them instead of me. They were all crying. And so was I. I ain't ashamed to admit it. So when I see a fursuiter out ignoring kids or giving a half-assed performance, I get a little cold and dead inside. Fursuit is a big responsibility. It's magic. So no, I ain't gonna say, you gotta follow the rules. That ain't my place. But you're not gonna get any points with anybody else if you don't. Sure as hell not with me. I walked out of there with my head kind of in a fog. I kind of half listened to a panel on writing furry fiction with that nice author I had bought the book from. And then I watched some of what I can only term was the furry version of the Olympics. A bunch of fursuiters were doing activities like the most violent game of musical chairs I'd ever seen. Trying to rush a ball down between cones with a broom. But there was no real competition. They were stopping just as often as they were trying to beat each other. They were trying to play to the audience. It was so energetic to watch. By the end of the weekend, it came time for closing ceremonies, and I went with Rekha, and Kage stepped up on stage, who, as it turns out, is the convention chairman. And he talked about attendance and the theme for next year and year-over-year growth and attendance. And then he talked about the amount of money that had been raised over the weekend for the charity that Anthrocon had chosen, which was a no-kill animal shelter out in Pennsylvania. Between the charity auction and donations, $11,522 was raised in one weekend. I walked out of there crying without really knowing why. Time heals all wounds, especially stupid, short-sighted ones. And I knew after that weekend was over that I wanted to be a part of this loving, crazy, caring, eclectic community of people. And I also, I admit, knew that I wanted to be one of the ones that were in costume. So I commissioned my own suit. 6 months later, it came in. It was like the biggest Christmas present I ever gave myself. The look on my face when I opened the box was better than any time I'd ever opened a present from Santa Claus. To see the character that I created staring back at me with this happy expression, and to realize what had led me there, it was magic. Uncle Kage said it best when he said that if you go to a furry convention, you'll see black people, white people, Asian people, Arab people, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, atheists, rich people, poor people, young and old, all of them gathered together for this event. And we don't see those differences. All we see is another furry. Maybe what species they are. That America has been looking for diversity since it was founded. And we found the diversity that America's always been looking for. And we found it just by being us.